Bonjour, French 1 students. This is Mrs. Krumschroeder with your teaching lesson for Lesson 2A. This is pages 26 to 29 in your textbook. So if at this time you would please get out your textbook and open it up à la page 26 so that you can follow along. Again, the pictures in the video are just provided to help you keep track of where we are. So, leçon 2, vidéo saine, famille et copain, à copain ou copine. In French, there are certain girls' and boys' names that sound the same. Occasionally, this can be confusing. So what they're talking about here is, for example, there are some names even in English that can be either a boy's name or a girl's name. For example, Jamie, right? Jamie can be a boy's name, Jamie can be a girl's name. So in French, there are also names that are the same way. Scene un. Philippe et Jean-Paul. Philippe is at home with his friend Jean-Paul. He seems to be expecting someone. Who could it be? The doorbell rings. Tiens, voilà Dominique. Dominique? Qui est-ce? Un copain ou une copine? C'est une copine. Scène 2. Philippe, Jean-Paul, Dominique. Salut Dominique, ça va? Oui, ça va. Et toi? C'est vrai, c'est une copine. So, in French, Dominique is one of those names that can be either a boy's name or a girl's name. So, kind of working through the translation here, we see tiens, which means look or hey. This is or that is or there's Dominic. Dominic? Right. Who's that? Or who is it? A male friend or a female friend. And again, notice the words themselves are different, but so is this little word in front of it, which is called an article. We're going to be talking today in French about articles. Okay? And c'est une copine. So again, we see that une one used here. So it's a female friend. Hi, Dominic. How are you? Yes, I'm fine. And you? It's true. It's a female friend. So apparently, Jean-Paul is impressed that a girl has come over to visit with them. So, continuing, our next thing that we have in our textbook is that yellow box. And remember, this is vocabulary. You need to pay attention to the yellow boxes throughout your textbook because that's where they're introducing you to new vocabulary. In these yellow boxes, you need to know the meaning and be able to spell correctly, including accent marks and such, all of the words in the yellow boxes. You'll need to be able to spell those and know their meanings for your lesson quizzes and for your unit tests, as well as your final exam at the end of the trimester. So again, we see this one starting with how to introduce or point out someone. So we have voici and voilà. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Remember that means to repeat after me. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Voici. Voici. Voici Jean-Paul. Voici Nathalie et François. Voilà. Voilà. Voilà Isabelle. Voilà Philippe et Dominique. Voici. Voilà. Our next little bit there is about how to find out who someone is. So now that you've kind of pointed out or introduced someone, how do you ask the question about who is this and answer that question? So, s'il vous plaît, répétez qui est. Qui est. Qui est? C'est. C'est Patrick. C'est un copain. How to get someone's attention or to express surprise. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Tienne. 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 Voilà Dominique. So, again, what we come to next is a little box with some vocabulary. And these are all nouns. In this case, these are all words that describe people or words that are people. Okay? Remember, nouns are people, places, things, or ideas. These happen to all be people. And you'll see they're separated into two columns. We see males and we see females. And you should notice a little bit of difference, right? In these male ones, they're introduced with this article un. And the female ones are introduced with this article une. Now, in French, all nouns are masculine or feminine. So, noticing whether a noun is introduced by an un or an une tells you whether that noun is masculine or feminine. These are males, so these are masculine nouns. And these are females, so these are feminine nouns. So, the word les personnes means people. Okay. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Les personnes. Les personnes. Un garçon. Un garçon. Un ami. Un ami. Un copain. Un copain. Un monsieur. Un monsieur. Un prof. Un prof. Une fille. Une fille. Un ami. Un ami. Une copine. Une copine. Une dame. Une dame. Un prof. Un prof. So some other little things to note. Okay. Notice that the difference between un ami male and un ami female, besides the un and the une, is the fact that the feminine one ends in an E. Notice for the other word for friend, the actual spelling of the words is different and they sound different, right? So un ami, they sound the same even though they're spelled slightly differently. But un copain, une copine, those definitely sound different. Also notice for prof, the prof part stays the same whether the teacher is male or female. So, if we practice all this new vocabulary, so the things that are in bold one more time, this time we're just going to repeat them once. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Voici. Voilà. Qui est? C'est. Tienne. Les personnes. Un garçon. Un ami. Un copain. Un monsieur. Un prof. Une fille. Un ami. Une copine. Une dame. Un prof. So, a little bit about French nouns. You might choose to take notes. It's kind of up to you. Okay, so I like your textbook because the first 2 units of your textbook really are teaching you expressions and getting you speaking French and not really focusing on grammar. So these grammar things that I'm pointing out, we're going to talk about them again when we get into units 3 through 8 in your textbook. Okay, but to talk about this a little bit right now, French nouns are different than English nouns. French nouns, okay, all French nouns in French, so all nouns are either masculine or feminine. That is different than in English. In English, our nouns are not masculine or feminine. Okay, so for example, pizza, hot dog, hamburger, pop. Those kinds of words are not masculine or feminine. When we start to learn them in French, we're going to see that those nouns are either masculine or feminine. Okay, so this is a big difference between French and English. Now, if you're going, oh my goodness, this is crazy, forget it, I'm going to switch out of French, I'm going to take Spanish instead. Spanish is exactly the same. In Spanish, nouns are masculine and feminine. This is going to be true of all languages that are based on Latin. So Italian, Spanish, they all have masculine and feminine nouns. So what that also means, or let's first kind of talk about how do we tell. Well, again, your book is starting with people because with people it's really easy, right? We saw that those masculine nouns were introduced by un. So when we see a noun introduced with un, it is a masculine or male person if it refers to a person, but otherwise it's a masculine noun. When we see a noun introduced by un, it is a feminine noun. And again, your textbook starts with people, right? This vocabulary related to people, because you're already kind of comfortable with the fact that a girl is a female, and so it doesn't seem so crazy that it would be a feminine noun. Same thing with gentleman, right? Gentleman is a male person, so it doesn't seem so crazy that it would be a masculine noun. Okay, so your book is starting with people because that's a little bit easier. That sort of makes sense, okay? So this is how you tell whether nouns are masculine and feminine. As you get a new vocabulary, as you look at your new vocabulary list that you got last week, right? There are some nouns on there that are masculine and some nouns on there that are feminine. You can tell by whether they have a or an un. So, also, because all nouns are either masculine or feminine, we talked about this the other day with lesson 1. Because all nouns are either masculine or feminine, adjectives, which are describing words, they oftentimes describe nouns, okay, must agree in gender, and gender just means that whole masculine or feminine, and number, and we'll eventually talk about number a little bit more, but what I mean by number is singular or plural, with the noun they describe. So, for example, right, your example for this would be, remember we have français, and we have française. We talked about this with those nationalities. And again, this E here tells me that this is the feminine form of the adjective French, and this is the masculine form. Okay, so again, the un, okay, they help me with whether the noun is masculine or feminine. And as we learn more and more adjectives, you're going to see that there are masculine and feminine forms of the adjectives because those adjectives have to agree with the noun they describe. S'il vous plaît, répétez un, une. It is important that those sound different when you say them. So that's a little aside about grammar. Okay. Continuing with our textbook, next we have a little note culturelle. Amis et copains. Right, so again, this is one of those, these are both new words that mean friends. So, French young people, like their American counterparts, enjoy spending time with their friends. They refer to their friends as un ami for a boy and une amie for a girl, or more commonly as un copain or une copine. Note that the words copain, copine can also have special meanings. When a boy talks about une copine, he is referring to a friend who is a girl. However, when he says ma copine, he may be referring to his girlfriend. Similarly, a girl would call her boyfriend mon copain. So, again, some of you might have wondered why there were two different ways to say friend here. Right? In our box here, there were kind of two different words for friend. Why were there two different words for friend? Okay, because kind of one's a little older, one's a little newer. More commonly now, students are going to refer to a friend as un copain or une copine. Okay, and then if I want to talk about my girlfriend, it's ma copine, and my boyfriend, mon copain. All right, on our next page, we see a little cartoon. Your textbook really enjoys using cartoons. Okay. And we see c'est un champion. And then mais non, c'est une championne. So notice here, right, the rider has his helmet on, and we can't tell whether it's a boy or a girl. So this boy here is making the assumption that that person is male. We can tell the assumption is that that person's male because they use that un, which is used for masculine nouns. The girl seems pleased to point out that indeed that is not a male champion, but a female champion. We can tell because now the helmet is off and we see it's a girl, but we also can tell because they've used that feminine form of that article. So a little petit comité. Cycling is a popular competitive sport throughout France. The most popular races are the Tour de France for men and the Grand Bus Féminin International for women. French women cyclists have won many titles. So if you've watched television during the summer, not so much this summer because I think they were canceled this summer, but in the past you might have caught the Tour de France. So the Tour de France, which was created in 1904, is a month-long bicycle race that takes cyclists around France, with particularly grueling stages, or étapes, in the Alps and the Pyrenees. Every year the route is somewhat different, but the finish line is always in Paris at the bottom of the Champs-Élysées. So that route that is the Tour de France isn't the same from year to year, but one thing that is always true is they always finish on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. The Tour de France Féminin began in 1984. From 1987 to 1989, it was dominated by the French cyclist Jeannie Longo. So again, talking about these bicycle races. All right, again, remember, green boxes in your textbook are grammar. Again, your book's not making a huge big deal about grammar right now, but they're kind of wanting you to notice it because eventually we will talk about it more specifically. And this is what we already have talked about today once, right? So we have un garçon, une fille. In French, all nouns are either masculine or feminine. Nouns referring to boys or men are almost always masculine. They are introduced by un. Nouns referring to girls or women are almost always feminine. They are introduced by une. So again, just pointing out, un is for masculine nouns. Une is for feminine nouns. Again, your book starts with people because this doesn't seem so strange to us when we talk about people. S'il vous plaît, répétez un garçon, un ami, une fille, une amie. So let's look at exercise 3. We're going to well, let's see if we can change this and put the right one in. Sorry about that. We want to do this one. All right, so taking a look at this exercise. Exercise number 1, copain ou copine. Say that the following people are your friends. Use un copain or une copine as appropriate. So we're going to do this one out loud. So I'm going to give you a moment to say them, and then I'm going to say them so you can check and see if you did it correctly. Okay, so notice our example, right? We can tell it's our example because, again, we see that little arrow, okay? And we see Elodie et une copine. So the part of this that's going to stay the same every time is the A. For Elodie, right, the name here became how we started this. And then every single time for our answer, it's either going to be un copain or une copine. And because Elodie's a girl, it's une copine. So you're going to change the name to the name under the picture. A stays the same every time, and it'll either be un copain or une copine. So try number 1 for Alice. Alice est une copine. Remember that if you do need a little bit more time than I give you, you can pause the video. All right, now try number 2, Cécile. Cécile est une copine. Now try number 3, Trine. Trine est un copain. Now try number 4, Robert. Robert est un copain. Now try number 5, Céline. Céline est une copine. Next, we're going to take a look at exercise number 3. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say these out loud. Un ou une. Identify the people below by completing the sentences with un or une. So in this spot where the ... is, you're either going to put un or une. Now, how do you decide? Well, you have to know your vocabulary that we're learning in this lesson. So maybe you're going to flip back and forth if you're not sure. Okay? And I'd like you to read the whole sentence, putting the correct thing in the blank. So let me do number 1 as an example, right? Number 1, fille. The word fille is, okay, feminine. So it's going to be voici une fille. So you would say voici une fille. So go ahead and do numéro 2. Voilà un garçon. Toi. Voici une dame. 4. Voici un ami. And I know it's un because I see this E on ami. Numéro 5. Nicolas est un ami. Again, I know ami is masculine because there isn't an E, plus the word Nicholas. The name Nicholas is a boy's name. Numéro 6. Jean-Paul est un copain. Numéro 7. Cécile est une copine. Numéro 8, we have voici Mademoiselle Lacroix. C'est un prof. We know it's un prof because mademoiselle is the word that refers to a female. It's the word for miss. 9. Voici Monsieur Masson. C'est un prof because monsieur is masculine. It's the word for Mr. And 10. Voici Madame Chalot. C'est une prof. Again, because Madame is feminine. All right, we're also going to practice exercise 4 out loud, à la fenêtre. You and a friend are walking down the street and you see the following people at their windows. Identify them in short dialogues. So we see, again, our example here, and our example. So we have, tiens, voilà un monsieur. So we choose a monsieur here because the picture looks like an older man. So of our new vocabulary, that's going to be the word un monsieur. Okay? For gentleman. Qui est, that's going to be the same every time. Say is going to be the same every time. And then this we knew because it's underneath the picture. So go ahead and try number 1. Tiens, voilà une fille. Qui est? C'est Nicole. You also could have had tiens, voilà une copine or tiens, voilà une amie. Any of those would have been fine. Try numéro 2, Mademoiselle Lassalle. Tiens, voilà une dame. Qui est? C'est Mademoiselle Lassalle. Try numéro 3. Tiens, voilà un garçon. Qui est? C'est Eric. Again, for this one, you also could have had tiens, voilà un ami or tiens, voilà un copain. Any of those would have been fine. All right, try numéro 4, Madame Albert. Tiens, voilà une dame. Qui est? C'est Madame Albert. You could have also had tiens, voilà un prof. Either of those would have been fine. Numéro 5. Tiens, voilà un monsieur. Qui est? C'est Monsieur Lavie. It also would have been fine to say tiens, voilà un prof. Numéro 6, Alain. Tiens, voilà un garçon. Qui est? C'est Alain. Again, for this one, you could have also had tiens, voilà un copain or tiens, voilà un ami. Any of those would have been fine. All right, next we see some numbers. But first we're going to practice our numbers from 0 to 60. I would encourage you at this time to find your piece of paper that has the numbers on it, because hopefully as we've been going through and we've been learning to say these, and you've been learning to say these, you've been writing down some words in English to help you remember how to pronounce these numbers. So, before we get to the new numbers today, we're going to practice the numbers from 0 to 60. So again, I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. S'il vous plaît, répétez. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, neuf, dix. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. So those are the numbers that you previously learned. Remember, there is a pattern. So for the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and we're also going to see for the 60s today, okay, we use the special kind of 10, if you will, number, and then 1 through 9. So by special 10 number, I mean 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, okay? But then we just reuse the numbers 1 through 9. Now, what we're going to see today, besides the 60s, we have the 70s. And so what happens in the 70s, and this is also going to happen when we learn the 90s, is that we use, and so we'll kind of just focus on the 70s for right now. We're going to use 60 and 10 through 19. So again, this part here, okay? That's what we see here, right? We see 1, 2, 5, right? All the way up to 9 with the special number for 60. Okay? This here. Okay? We still see that number for 60 in all of these. But now notice these numbers are the numbers from 10 to 19. So, s'il vous plaît, répétez 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. So really, to count from 60 to 79, you didn't have to learn any new numbers, right? We had already learned the number for 60, 60. All you had to do was combine that number 60 with the numbers 1 through 19. So let's take a look at exercise number 5, numéro de téléphone. Read aloud the phone numbers of Jean-Paul's friends in Paris. So our example here is Philippe, right? And notice we have 01, 01, 42, 42, 61, 19, 75. So we're going to do these out loud. What I want you to do is say the numbers. So again, I'm going to give you a moment to say them, then I'm going to say them. So Martine, zéro un, 41, 33, 64, 79. So now try Michel. Zéro un, 42, 56, 76, 62. Try Stephanie. Zéro un, 45, 68, 77, 35. Finally, du François. Zéro un, 49, 78, 13, 62. All right, a little bit again about prononciation, la liaison. Pronounce the following words. S'il vous plaît, répétez un ami, un américain, en anglais, un artiste. In general, the N of un is silent. However, in the above words, the N of un is pronounced as if it were the first letter of the next word. This is called liaison. Liaison occurs between two words when the second one begins with a vowel sound. That is, with A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes H and Y. Although liaison is not marked in written French, it will be indicated in your book by this symbol where appropriate. So what they're saying is, right up here we see these, and they kind of have that little mark there, but you wouldn't write that mark. That mark is there in your textbook to help you remember how to say it correctly. So, contraster et répéter. So, contrast and repeat. S'il vous plaît, répétez un ami, un américain, un italien, un artiste, un copain, un français, un canadien, un prof. So that brings us to your homework. So remember, whether you're choosing to type up your homework in Google Docs or handwrite it on a piece of paper, all homework assignments have to be uploaded to Google Classroom. If you are handwriting it on a piece of paper, that's going to mean that you've been taking a picture of it and uploading that picture to Google Classroom for the assignment. So remember, this is just a little quick reminder about how your paper should be set up, whether you're typing it or handwriting it. Somewhere towards the top of your paper, I want your first and last name, the date, and what class period you're in. Near the top of the paper, I want the full homework assignment, so not just that it's homework number 5, but what homework number 5 is. And then, again, it should be pretty clear, exercise 3, and then, like, your numbers for exercise 3, Okay, and then, you would have your exercise 5 and your numbers for exercise 5. Okay, so that's what your homework assignments should look like. So let's talk about exercise 5 to make sure you know what you're supposed to do. Let's actually look at exercise 3 first. So that was this one. Okay. So, for this one, remember we did this one out loud and you were putting either or an un in the blanks. So you just need to write out this whole sentence. So for number 1, you're going to write voici une fille. Now, for the couple at the bottom, numbers 8, 9, and 10, where there are 2 sentences, you just need to write the sentence with the ... in it. Okay? Again, remember, if you're typing this up, make sure you have your accent marks in it, right? So on voila, you have to get that accent on that A, or it's misspelled. You have to get the cedille on the C, or it's misspelled. Again, I would encourage you to be doing those accent marks with your keyboard in the international keyboard so that when you take your lesson quizzes and your unit test, you're familiar with how to get those special marks. So that's exercise 3. Exercise 5, again, we did this one out loud as well. So what you're going to do right on your paper for this one is you're going to write like Martine's name, and then you're going to write out in words the numbers, kind of like they did for Philippe's here, but you're going to do it for Martine, Michelle, Stephanie, and Francois. So you'll write out those numbers so that you're learning how to spell those numbers correctly. So that is your homework. Au revoir, à demain.